building a better Bay Area for a safe and secure future. This is ABC7 News.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Croyce in for Kristen Z today. Welcome to our daily program called Getting Answers. This is Pride Month, and today we're going to hear from a trans activist and the treasurer for the board of directors for San Francisco Pride. We'll also talk about J.K. Rowling's controversial comments and the new announcement today from the Trump administration rolling back a policy that protected LGBTQ patients from discrimination. He did this on the 4th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, where 49 people died. We're also going to hear from Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, who's talking about major takeaways from her town hall last night regarding the police department, reform, and systemic racism in Oakland. But first, we want to begin with medical updates, as we are now more than 2 weeks into protests around the country in the middle of this pandemic. So joining me now is ABC7 special correspondent Dr. Alok Patel. And remember, you can all ask questions of Dr. Patel in real time on our Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Dr. Patel, good afternoon. Good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Good to digitally see you as well.
Yes, that's how we got to do it these days. All right, Dr. Patel, let's just have you start off by kind of giving us a big picture look at what we're seeing in California. We're hearing cases are going up. What does that really mean?
Well, what that means is, according to the COVID tracking project, California is one of over 20 states where cases have actually gone up since Memorial Day, specifically in the last 7 days. And even right here in the Bay Area, we saw increases in several counties, including Napa and Marin County. And so there's a wide variety of factors why this may be. Some suspect that it's related to Memorial Day, which was a little bit more than 2 weeks ago, and people kind of getting quarantine fatigue and going outside and breaking some of those physical distancing measures. And so we just have to be a little bit more vigilant and see how this plays out as more businesses reopen.
One of the things we continue to hear, though, is, oh, well, testing's really going up because, or cases are going up because testing is going up. What do you make of that?
What I make of that is it's multifactorial. So yes, testing is going up, but you can't use testing alone as a parameter for every single place in the country where cases are going up, because we're also seeing an increase in hospitalizations. And so when you see people who are actually getting sick from this, that can't just be accounted for because of testing. Yes, that's only one part. But when also you say testing is going up, you want to look at the total amount of cases that are positive. Because if more people are testing positive in a smaller amount of people, we're not doing a great job of containing this.
That's like case rate, is that right? I know Governor Newsom also often talks about the case rate is now what we should be looking at as opposed to the number of cases. Can you talk a little bit about what the case rate is and what that case rate is here in California?
Well, our case rate is really moving around, and so I don't want to get boggled down into one number because it really depends on your county, it depends on reporting, there's a lot of factors out there. But for example, if you were to test 100 people and 10 came back positive, you could say we have 10 new cases today, but that case positive rate in that set right there is 10%. Now, if you tested 1,000 people and 10 came out positive, you would still have that same amount, but you would have a 1% rate. So that's a very different amount when you're looking at the total proportion of people. That's why I don't want to say that you can just rely on testing to say cases are going up. We have to also think about the fact that these cases might be increasing because people out there are increasing the person-to-person transmission. So I know it sounds like a lot of numbers and a lot of epidemiology, but bottom line is we're still in the first wave of this pandemic.
That's why we have you to break it all down for us. It is a lot of numbers. I'm going to take some of the questions that we've been getting in from folks. One of them is really about asking if you could clarify this idea of asymptomatic people and the idea of asymptomatic versus pre-symptomatic as well.
This was a lot of talk across the country because of those comments made by the World Health Organization, which they admitted was a mistake and they walked them back on Tuesday. So according to the CDC, asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic spread are real. That's the most important thing. Now, the difference between the two, pre-symptomatic spread means you felt fine, you had no symptoms, and you possibly were contagious, and then you later developed symptoms. That's pre-symptomatic. Asymptomatic spread means you never developed any symptoms. You never knew you were sick, but you were still passing the virus. Now, people might be thinking, well, how on earth can you prove asymptomatic spread? Now, there's multiple models out there that have shown that asymptomatic spread had to be a large player in how the pandemic rolled out, not only in China and Europe, but here as well, which is why the CDC estimates that we've seen as much as 30 to 40% of cases spread by asymptomatic spreaders. So,
right.
Bottom line, just because you're feeling fine or you have no symptoms doesn't mean you should let your guard down right now. And I'm hearing people saying that, saying, you know what, we're okay, we all feel fine. That is not the case.
I'm hearing that too. I mean, it's pretty clear. I think we could all say in our network, people have definitely relaxed a little bit, and we really shouldn't be. Another question we're getting in, Dr. Patel, is what is this antibody drug cocktail that's now in trial?
Oh, it's exciting, but Regeneron, the company, only put out a press release. We don't know that much about it, but basically what's happening is this is the first human trial for an antibody treatment towards this coronavirus. Now, there's a difference between an antiviral and an antibody drug. An antiviral affects the virus's ability to replicate. What Regeneron is wanting to do with the antibody drug, what they want to test, is that it can not only treat but also prevent coronavirus infections. The way the science works is that this drug, in theory, would actually prevent the virus from binding to certain receptors in your body to prevent the infection in the first place. And they're going to trial this in 2 groups to not only test for treatment but also prevention. And Regeneron has said that they're going to release a study kind of detailing a lot more of their research and how they came to get with this trial. So we'll learn more in the next week. But right now, I know all the headlines are excited, and so are the stock market projections.
Yes, absolutely. And also, you know, the CDC, as you know, just issued new guidance about activities. What is that guidance? Can you expand a little bit on that?
Absolutely, and I think it's really important for people to be familiar with these guidelines. You know, there's a lot of activities people want to do right now, everything from going to a movie, to a restaurant, to the beach, to hiking. And the CDC kind of put out general guidelines, and it's basically what it's called is like deciding to go out. And it really helps people understand how to break down the risk of several different activities. You have to think about things like the density of people at this activity, how long you're going to spend in a place, is it indoor, is it outdoor, can you actually physically distance in this place? And then you want to think about your county. And if cases are going up, you want to think about your individual risk, that of your children, your family, people you're interacting with. So there's a lot of variables to take into account. People should definitely check out the CDC to try to kind of plan out their activities and see if they're doing everything they can to reduce their risk.
I think we are almost at time. So quickly, is there one thing you're seeing right now, Dr. Patel, that's most concerning you about some of the relaxations that we're seeing right now as we reopen?
Well, you put me on the spot, but I will say the most concerning thing is the juxtaposition of the new modeling showing us that we could see another 100,000 deaths by fall with this quarantine fatigue and people just being really tired of it. And I understand people are tired of it. You know, we've been sheltered in place for months, but people need to understand that we still have a ways to go, and maybe it's time we flip our mindset a little bit and just be a little bit open with people and talk about, you know, how we're feeling and the fact that it sucks to be sheltered in place, but instead of thinking about how much we're losing, let's think about the fact that we could save a lot of lives if we just stick to it.
Absolutely, and there are some
I'm doing my
nice
best.
things.
I'm doing my best to spread the
We're
positivity.
trying. I love the positivity, Dr. Patel. What can we do? All right, stick with us because you know we're going to continue through the commercial break if people are watching us on Facebook Live. But we've covered, as you know, the pandemic. So covering up, we're going to talk about what's happening with Pride and J.K. Rowling's controversial comments regarding trans people. Also, Mayor Libby Schaaf. We have her on police reform. We're going to take a break on air right now, but the conversation does continue on our live streams, including Facebook Live, happening right now. Stick with us. All right, Dr. Patel, we're back on Facebook Live. I want to ask you about vacation because it is summer. People want to go I know my fiance and I are talking about trying to go camping for a couple days, just something to get away and make us feel like we're taking a summer break. What are your recommendations on that?
Well, foremost, I think it's really important for people to get out if they can, get in nature, work out. It's not only good for your body to get some fitness in, but it's also good for your mental health. And like we mentioned earlier, I think it's important for people to think about their specific activity and try to go through some type of mental checklist and see if you're doing everything you can to reduce the risk. You mentioned camping. Great. You can easily physically distance in camping. You can be away from other people. You're also outdoors, which is less risk. Camping is very different than people who want to, say, get on an airplane and fly to another county where there's a lot of cases and go to a bar or a restaurant. Those are two completely different activities with respect to how many people you're coming in contact with and your person-to-person transmission risk.
We're getting a question in right now. Sally's asking, should students live in dorms?
Sally, that is a great question, and I don't know if there's a one one-size-fits-all answer right now. Well, from what I've heard, colleges are really getting creative right now, and they're trying to think, what are they going to be able to do in fall? Can they actually physically distance the dorms? Can they, stagger how many kids are living in dorms at one time? What are they going to do about the hygiene measures? What are they going to do about the shared spaces? Dorms are not that different than shared buildings in the city. So can you have students stay in a dorm and then close down all the study areas and, the main areas where people congregate? I think that's going to be an evolving topic going into fall.
Absolutely. All right, we have 30 seconds left, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here with you, Dr. Patel. Thank you, as always, for joining us and for all your insight. We really appreciate it. It's good to see you, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Stay safe camping.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good one. All right, thanks to all of you watching us here on Facebook. I think we're just a couple minutes away, and we have Suzanne Ford standing by to join us. A few seconds away, so stick with us. Hold on. Welcome back with news breaking within the past few hours that the Trump administration is rolling back LGBTQ patient protections. J.K. Rowling's comments about trans people and the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting that killed 49 people, all during Pride Month. So there is a lot for us to unpack here as we talk about all of this. And joining me now to break it all down and for reaction is trans activist and the treasurer of San Francisco Pride, Suzanne Ford. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it really is such an important time with it being Pride Month and also the anniversary of, the Pulse nightclub shooting. So I just want to start, though, with this news that we just got this afternoon that the Trump administration has reversed an Obama-era policy that banned healthcare providers from discriminating against transgender patients. Can you respond to that reversal? What does this mean to you and to the trans community?
Well, obviously, it's not surprising given all the moves by the Trump administration to hurt the trans community. I think it's just one more nail in our coffin, literally. You can imagine how dangerous this is. A black trans woman's brought into an emergency room in, let's say, Alabama, and the only physician on duty refuses to treat her based on their religious beliefs. And, she is not protected. And his religious beliefs trump her right as a human being to be treated. That's the sort of thing, and it might sound extreme, but we know in the trans community that we have to talk about extreme cases because that's what we face. So every trans person, every LGBTQ person in our country should be alarmed and should be greatly angered by this latest action by the Trump administration.
I think, you were sort of telling me this prior. I think we often think of the Bay Area, it is a very open, progressive place. But even here, you've faced your own levels of discrimination as well. So it can happen really anywhere. It's not just Alabama or, as you mentioned.
Right. I always want to think, I am from the South originally. I always want to think about my trans brothers and sisters and people in the South. But yes, it happens right here in the Bay Area. Trump's actions are meant to cater to the evangelical community. And right here in Novato, California, I was kicked out of my church when I transitioned. So yes, we do face discrimination in the Bay Area, as well as the rest of the country. Obviously, I'm privileged in a lot of ways to be living in the Bay Area and to have had some of the greatest trans healthcare that you could have in the world. Mm-hmm. But also, when I did transition in my insurance through my work, my physicians group, two of the endocrinologists in that group refused to treat me, and I had to go outside of my network to get hormone treatment as a transitioning woman.
Right. Well, this brings me really to something else that a lot of people are talking about right now, and that is those comments made by Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling that many have perceived as trans exclusionary. She seems to be insisting on a definition of gender based on your gender assigned at birth. Here's part of what she said. She said, when you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth. What is your reaction to J.K. Rowling?
Well, it's all those arguments we've heard before in the trans community, and like some part of me wants to some part of me wants to just say, you know, like not have to respond to J.K. Rowling or to be kind of mild in the response, but really, like all of these things we're talking about, it's a simple line. We are supposed to be seen. I'm a woman. My experience, I transitioned later in life. So yes, I had some privilege that, you know, posing as a man in this society, I had some privileges, and I have a different experience than J.K. Rowling. But that does not diminish my being a woman. And so we have to draw a straight line with people like J.K. Rowling and say, no, trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people are non-binary people, and there's no gray area. There's no room in the debate to say, well, you know, maybe J.K. has a point. No, she does not have a point in this area. And the bathroom argument is such a red herring, and you know, no one would go through what we go through to get into a bathroom, and it just it angers me. I really can't even get all my thoughts out. But
no,
you're
very eloquent in what you're saying, and because of that, I just want to also ask you about Pride right now. This is coming at a really interesting time, not only because of COVID, but also amid these Black Lives Matter protests. What should people understand about the relationship and the history between LGBTQ issues and Black Lives Matter?
Well, you know, Pride started at Stonewall in New York, and Marsha P. Johnson is the mother of this whole movement, the Pride movement, and a trans woman in New York at Stonewall, Marsha P. Johnson, another trans woman of color, Sylvia Rivera. So we owe the whole movement to trans women. And also in the city of San Francisco, the Compton's riots were at Compton Cafeteria, where Black trans women stood up against police brutality in the Tenderloin. So, you know, our movement owes its genesis to those Black trans women. And so we at Pride, we understand, you know, Pride is about celebrating our community. It's about educating the world and liberating our people. And right now, Pride needs to focus on liberating Black lives. And so any way that we can support Black lives, we want to do. We are having a virtual program on Saturday and Sunday. We just released today the press release, and Big Frida from New Orleans is heading our performers, is the headliner. However, you know, we at Pride are looking for ways that we can support the Black LGBTQ community and the larger Black community also. So I can just say
that is so important. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Suzanne, but I have to go to break. But we're going to continue this conversation on our Facebook Live right now, and what we can expect for Pride coming up in a couple weeks. So stick with us here, and we'll see you on Facebook Live. All right, sorry about that, Suzanne. It's always sort of an awkward break there. We got to transition, but I want to let's go back to what you're saying, because that does take us to 2 weeks from now. We're going to see, it means Pride Month. San Francisco Pride is happening at the end of June. What can we expect this year?
Okay, so Saturday and Sunday we will have virtual programming. Saturday I think it's 1 to 9, and Sunday 2 to 7. And Big Frida's the headliner on Saturday. New Orleans Black performer, and we're so excited that they agreed to be part of Pride this year. And then as far as we have the Lavender Talks, which is a series of panels with the Commonwealth Club. There's another one coming up on June 25th during Pride Week. And then also we've been approached by the community. We're in talks with other Black LGBT organizations, LGBTQ organizations to support Black lives, and we're exploring how we might do that.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, it is the 50th anniversary of Pride, right? Last year was the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. Now it's the 50th anniversary of San Francisco Pride. That's a big milestone. We are celebrating it virtually, but what does it mean to you? And we have 30 seconds.
Well, growing up in Kentucky, every year as a young kid, I used to see on the national news once a year, they'd have pictures of the Pride Parade, and it wouldn't be shown in the best light. But somewhere in my heart, this little kid in Kentucky who was portraying a boy, in my heart, I knew if I could just get to San Francisco that I could find my people, and that's what it means.
That's beautiful. I love that we're ending on that. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
We
having me.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. All right, welcome back. Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf is talking about the action the city has taken to address growing calls for police reform, her vision for how police will interact, and accountability. But first, here's her takeaways from last night's town hall on policing.
Well, people are very angry. They are demanding big change. And I know that Oakland was made for this moment. The work that has already begun is ready to launch. That's what people want to see. They want to see a shift towards non-law enforcement response, towards more investment in human potential and empowerment. And that is something that Oakland has always been about. Last night at our police commission, we heard the first presentation of a year-long preparation to launch something called Macro, which is mobile response by community organizations in Oakland. This is inspired by a model from Oregon, where people can get a non-police response to their emergency, to their crisis. So it is exciting that we've worked deeply with our community over the last year so that we are now ready to actually implement what many cities are just now beginning to talk about.
So what will that look like? You said it would be something that starts how long from now?
Well, that is something that will be presented at the City Council coming up soon, but we are pretty ready to go. We have amazing community organizations that are already trusted by the community in a way that the police not always are. And these are trained clinicians, they're medics. The idea that when you call 911, you don't always need a badge and a gun to respond. And we also have to recognize that especially people of color, Black and brown Oaklanders, have lost faith in the police. They do not create a sense of safety because of the incredible brutality and abuse that we have seen on a nationwide basis. We have to honor that reality. We have to have alternatives. And that is something that Oakland is absolutely ready to do, and invest in more wealth, more housing security, more education. We know that that is what truly drives safety for a community.
I know that was the reasons why a lot of people were asking for the police to be defunded so that those funds could be rerouted to investing in the community. And you were like, we don't need to defund the police in order to invest in the community. So what is the plan to invest in community in those areas that you just mentioned?
Well, I would argue that Oakland has already been responsive to that community demand to start investing more. To our knowledge, we are the only city with a Department of Race and Equity, which is tasked with actually looking at dismantling structural racism. It is not just in policing, it's in things like our land use policies, where we choose to make capital improvements in our city. We also are investing in this budget that I proposed actually weeks ago, cuts the police budget by $5 million and adds $22 million for things like job training, homeless services, affordable housing, and addressing the illegal dumping problem in East Oakland and West Oakland. Those are the kinds of things that people want to see to feel like they are being heard, their needs are being met. That is in the proposed budget that is in front of the City Council right now.
So what vision do you have for the Oakland Police going forward when it comes to how they interact with the community?
We have to engage in a whole different model. And I have a lot of hope. When you look at statistics, you see tremendous changes in Oakland Police. 8 Can't Wait campaign has already recognized that Oakland has seen one of the most dramatic reductions in officer-involved shootings, but we must do more. And a lot of that has to do with culture. And one of the things that Oakland is doing, and it was one of our focuses last night in our town hall, is the creation of a race equity group within the police department, led by an officer who is having the important and sometimes uncomfortable conversations about race, not just about how the department interacts with the community, but how the department itself behaves. And that type of dismantling of structural racism has to not only come from community pressure, but it has to come from inside, from the workers themselves. And that is one of the exciting things that Oakland is doing to really change that. You know, I talked about it a few years ago, that frat house culture, that racist culture that we continue to see over and over again in police departments across the country.
I know accountability is a big part of this discussion too. Did that come up at all in the town hall? And were there any, I guess, solutions or discussions about how to enforce accountability within the department?
You know, I'll be honest with you. There's right now somewhat of a polarized debate. A lot of people don't want to even talk about police reform or accountability or change tactics. They want to abolish the police. And that is a voice that we must listen to. Not everyone is going to be ready to get there right now, but this envisioning of a world where we don't need an armed response because there is such a high level of safety, such a high level of community well-being. That is a vision I think we all can agree on.
So at this point, there really isn't a discussion about accountability, because I think if there is this change, there still will be instances where officers might need to respond.
Oh, absolutely. There is always a talk about accountability. Last night, the Police Commission also heard proposals from Chief Mannheim for immediate changes to our use of force policy. The City Council is going to be re-examining our policies around the use of tear gas. All of that is happening. That conversation, that work is happening. I just want to acknowledge the people who don't want to have that conversation because they've moved on to an entirely different system.
All right, and Mayor Schaaf says she wants to focus on dismantling structural racism, not just in the police department, but in the community. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, hi to all of you watching here on Facebook. We want to talk about some of the reopenings that are happening in all the counties around the Bay Area, specifically San Francisco. They are reopening outdoor dining today. And here is what is expected on Monday. Let's see, today about 300 wineries and breweries in Sonoma County are allowed to reopen tasting rooms without being required to serve food. Face coverings and social distancing are still mandatory. Since May 23rd, Sonoma County wineries and breweries have been allowed to serve food and drinks outdoors if they had a food facility permit. They now join Napa County wineries, which were allowed to resume business earlier this week. Businesses in Monterey County, those are reopening today. That includes wineries, bars, and even whale watching. Aquariums are also allowed to reopen, but the Monterey Bay Aquarium has yet to set a date. Staff says when they do reopen, expect masks to be required and tickets to be limited. So those are just some of the changes. I know that I personally have, been trying to safely take part in some of these activities where I live. I did now go to one outdoor restaurant and sit outside in a very socially distanced way, and I felt it to be very safe. And so I'm, slowly trying to venture out of the house a little bit more. But you heard Dr. Alok Patel say that cases are going up, and it's not just that cases are going up because testing's going up, hospitalizations are going up, and that is key. It means people are getting sick now. The virus is still out there. And so we have to be super vigilant and very careful. And so, You know, that's what we got. It's sad. As he said, it sucks, Dr. Patel said, but it is what it is. So anyway, stick with us. We're about to start back up again. I want to thank you all for joining us. And I just want to mention, too, actually, that Pride, I don't think I got the dates in there. It's the 27th and 28th of this year, and it is virtual. So if you want to participate in Pride virtually, it's the 27th and 28th. All right, stick with us. We're about to come back on air. All right, thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. Hopefully you learned something from Dr. Alok Patel. We also heard from a trans activist about several major issues being talked about today. And Mayor Libby Schaaf in Oakland gave us some answers on police reform. We'll be here every weekday at 3. Have a great day.